In his fictional short story, The Garden of Forking Paths, Jorge Luis Borges centers a mystery around a late Chinese author who has constructed a labyrinth within an unfinished novel. The story explains that this is a labyrinth of time, where all possible outcomes are described and where timelines diverge and reconverge in a maze of possible events. Reading this story, I immediately thought of game books, a literary genre that I treasure as a medium in itself and as well as a medium that I don't feel has fully explored its potential. Probably the game books viewers will most likely recognize are the classic choose your own adventure books. These are books where the reader begins a normal story, but at some point they will be presented with a choice. They will be asked to choose between possibilities and learn where their choice takes the story next. So for example, if you decide to join the government group, the Center for Galactic Research, and study deep space messages, turn to page 10. If you decide to go with the private group, the LifeCom for Intelligent Life Studies, and work on flying saucer research, turn to page 15. The books now include collector cards and website URLs where the reader may go to find even more endings, as they have been now reprinted. As a youth, some of my favorites of these books were the TSR Endless Quest books, which included took place in the Dungeons & Dragons universe and had many terrible ways to die or come to an awful end. Some of these took place in Dungeons & Dragons, others took place in the TSR Top Secret, Cloak and Dagger kind of books. You had Star Frontiers, which was TSR's space role-playing game, and Gamma World, another one of my favorites, which was a post-apocalyptic kind of universe. And I read these books many times. They got many rereads, and that's, I think, is an effective, why these are an effective medium as far as educationally, because you are going to, one of the things the Common Core emphasizes is close reading, and this you have to closely read these books because you're going to read the same passages over and over and over again as you try to find the branching ways the story can take you in order to find the most successful ending. In exploring these different paths, one thing I like to do with my kids is I like to map out the game book and the different paths you can go. So this is, for example, this is a map from the book Time Machine, World War II Codebreaker, where you play a time traveler assisting Alan Turing in cracking the enemy codes. And you can see you start and you'll go to Manchuria, 1931. You make a choice. You go to Magic Transcripts in 1940. You could hit Pearl Harbor in 1941. Takes you to VJ Day in 1945. VJ Day takes you up to Manchuria, or you could go to Germany. You could go to Germany early 1930s or Operation Torch 1942. And all of these, eventually you're going to work your way to mission complete. And there's a lot of choices when it comes to these books. Wizards of the Coast, which now owns Dungeons and Dragons, has reintroduced the Endless Quest books. These are great. They've shortened the passages to keep things interesting. You could be a cleric, you could be a rogue, you could be a wizard, another rogue, or you could be a fighter. There's also, going to different thrift stores and stuff, we found that there's a whole bunch of Star Wars Decide Your Destiny books, some old books from the Escape from the Kingdom of From. We've got Transformers Choose Your Own Adventure. We've got what's this, Forest of Doom. I don't know what that is. I just picked it up because it was here's a neat one, Micro Adventure, where this is an old one where you have to write computer programs in BASIC to solve problems in the book in order to get through to the end to the end successfully. There are also, as I mentioned, there was the Time Machine books. You can find those used on Amazon. I found these, the World War II Experience book. There's several of these. The You Choose books, which teach history while also providing an interactive experience. The Time Machine books also do that. There's a great one about the Underground Railroad, in addition to the story of Alan Turing and a lot of other historical events. So there's a lot of different publishers and authors have explored this medium. Here's a neat one I haven't tried out yet. I found this online used. It's a one-on-one Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. This is TSR, back $5.95 back then. And this is, you can be the Arcane, the Great Wizard, or Renwood, the powerful druid, and you're both going to be exploring the same dungeon. And at the same time, so it's two players reading two different books as two different characters, and you can run into each other and have combat against each other. And a one-on-one adventure for two high-level magic users. So I thought this was a really neat concept here, a unique example within this medium. A complaint my son has about Choose Your Own Adventures is sometimes there can be way too much reading. There's too much reading and too little game, and I do kind of have to agree with that. I think the writing isn't why you're not reading a Choose Your Own Adventure for the great story, because the story is going to be whatever comes out of it, out of your choices. And so I think as a medium, if you're writing a Choose Your Own Adventure, keep the time between choices very short. So very little text. I think one set of books that does a great job of this is game developer Steve Jackson and Ian Livingston, have created these fighting fantasy books, and these are wonderful. You're gonna get a character sheet, and you're going to go through a dungeon, and every room in the dungeon or event is its own paragraph, and you're going to roll dice, and you're going to encounter monsters, and you're going to try and stay alive, and you're not going to get two choices, you're going to get three choices. You could go north, east, south. Which wall are you going to check? How are you going to go through this? And so this way, this book is, unlike a Choose Your Own Adventure, this is really a labyrinth. And you can see that in the fact that there are websites that you have to draw a map in order to get through these adventures, and because you are going to get lost. So as you can see here, I've got one map for each of the different adventures that I have here, and it looks like a couple extras. So that's Steve Jackson and Ian Livingston's fighting fantasy books. Get one of these and you will spend a long time. They are challenging books. They are not easy. It really is quite a puzzle to get through these. So highly recommend these. So there's an excellent YouTube channel called Geek Gamers where she talks about solo role-playing games, and it reminded me of what I used to do as a kid if I didn't have anybody to play a role-playing game with, and that is play the game by myself, be my own dungeon master. So get yourself some characters, and you'll see here there is a map. Role-playing games, dungeon crawlers. This is great for dungeon crawlers. I don't think it's so great for maybe there's a Star Trek board role-playing game. I don't think this would work for this, but if you got a dungeon crawler and you have a map with a dungeon, do this. I remember it was kind of like magic when I learned that the way a role-playing game works is, so they will come into the dungeon, you go to number one. Well, what's at number one? Number one is the main gate. A wide passage slopes down to a set of bronze doors. Coiled serpents decorate the metal with a sliding hatch at head height. 4-inch wide holes pierce the base of each door. Think about what you're going to do. How's your character going to proceed? And then read the rest of it. This is what the dungeon master would be dealing with, telling you behind the scenes. This is the behind the scenes part. Be your own dungeon master. Make your decision on how you're going to do it. Oh, let's go to number two. Number two is the Hall of War. So in this way, a role-playing game book can be a choose your own adventure for yourself, and roll the dice and treat yourself fairly or go hard on yourself. Make it as hard or as easy as you like. In addition to role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, Dungeon Crawlers, there are people have made role-playing games for Solitaire Roleplaying, and this is Wings of Lightning by E. Nate Kurth. And this is a solitaire role-playing game. You'll print out some characters, and this is free, by the way. This is a free print-and-play game. Print out the book and go to it. You've got boss fights, you've got puzzles, you've got dungeons, you've got choices. So this is a great one. There's also one, and again, I haven't played this one. It is on my to-do list. There's also the Doctor Who solitaire story game. You've got your rules booklet, your adventure booklet, event booklet, and enemy booklet. And in this way, this game will create, you've got your character sheet, this game will create a novel adventure for you through the interaction of content in these different books. In these discussions of infinite stories and storytelling, gameplay, and game books, I also wanted to mention there's several board games out there. I have their Choose Your Own Adventure books now have, there's 2 board games out for that. I couldn't find those for this video. They're somewhere lost in my house. My house is just piles of board games everywhere, as you could imagine. But one I wanted to mention, this is no longer in print, but it's a great, I just wanted to give it to you as an example of just a really great game in terms of storytelling, and that is Tales of the Arabian Nights by Z-Man Games. I hope they reprint it. It's really, this was so much fun. We've broken this out a couple times, and my son we play it and can't stop playing it. And the idea here is that there is a map. You are an adventurer. You can be you could be Sinbad or one of the other characters from the Arabian Nights. And what you're going to do is everyone's going to start in Baghdad, and you're going to start going out and you're going to get quest cards that you're going to try and go around and collect a good story, kind of. And you're going to go to different locations, and those locations will be mountains, sea, desert, forest, or islands, and there's different kinds of cities. And depending on these icons, you're going to draw an encounter card, and then you're going to go to the Book of Tales. And the Book of Tales has got thousands of different encounters in here, and depending on the skills you have as a warrior or a storyteller or a rogue or a scholar, or how much wisdom you have, you're going to be able to succeed or fail at these different quests. Now, my son got the absolute worst possible luck possible playing this game, but he loved it so much. I ended up winning the game, but he ended up playing for hours and hours afterwards, and I helped him out with it and went through the algorithm with him to keep him playing, and it was just amazing until his character overcame all the adversity and just he was playing Sinbad, and just got to the point of being able to just dominate any story he ran into with the special abilities he had gotten, and that was great. And you have a wealth track, and you have what was it, health track and other tracks. I forget the others at this. You got magic, different skill trees, and different treasures you can get, and all of these things kind of level you up. And he kept even though he lost, he continued to play with me helping him out on his own to just level up his character, and even then he kept playing. So this was a great game. One thing I do want to note about this game is if you think I like to talk about how board games are kind of programming, this game has got some bugs in it. There were situations, I'm pretty sure we checked and double checked that all, where I was in the desert, but I encountered a flood and got washed out to sea. So I feel like there's some debugging that needed to be done. I know there's some errata printed for the rules, but again, this is unfortunately this is prohibitively expensive now. It's now a collector's item, but there are games like this, like I said, there's the Choose Your Own Adventures and other board games that are storytelling. There's just so many of them. There is also graphic novel role-playing games out there as well, which just look awesome. And I wish I had some of those to show you here during this video. Maybe I can do a review on some in the future. So I mentioned that Choose Your Own Adventures, I keep saying Choose Your Own Adventures, they're game books. Game books are a medium that I feel is something a lot of people aren't aware of, and also a medium that continues, I think, is something that offers a lot of possibilities that people haven't explored. And they're also kind of like programming. As we've seen, there's a lot of decision trees. There's a lot of if-then else statements in adventure books. And you can kind of map them out, just as you can map out logic. in your programming. And I think as a medium, I think these are great for kids, a great way for kids to express themselves. My son has written several game books, and this is one, it's called Survive As Long As You Can. And my wife helped him write it and helped him draw some pictures for it. And she got the skull going here, and this is just great. And you keep, when kids write their own adventure books, I highly recommend keep it to just a paragraph. Paragraph set of choices. You maybe consider doing the role-playing game thing by adding in hit points and other variables. And the more variables you add in, the more complex the game gets to keep everything straight. But I also think that's a great example, a great exercise in early programming. So originally, my plan this week was to talk about a role-playing game I've been writing in JavaScript with my boys, where they dictate what happens in the game and I program it out. However, that game is taking a little bit longer to write as it is. And I realized, you know what, this video can serve as more of a foundation, because writing that program wouldn't be possible without an understanding of game books, without having written my own game books, without my son writing game books, without us understanding these different if-then conditional logic kind of choices that we have to make in game books. The same things, the skills it takes to write a game book are the skills you're going to use in programming. And I just think that's great, and I think it's such a wonderful medium, and I hope I hope teachers and parents will give your kids game books to explore and learn from. So thank you so much for tuning in.